Whenever a teacher would assign a book, I'd always think it was about to be the most boring thing in the entire world, but a few of them actually surprised me, and I wanted to share my favorite assigned school books with you, starting with Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I actually have a copy of this one because I wanted my boyfriend to read it, and I kind of wanted it for myself as well. This is not the kind of book that I normally read. This is more of a dystopian novel, and I'm into more murder mystery things and like thrillers, even when I was in the 7th and 8th grade when I was assigned this book. But because this book is about books being illegal in another world, naturally, as a bookworm, it pulled me in to want to read the rest of the book. And I think that's where a lot of the readers really came from for this. Now, there are two theories for this book. The first theory, and the one that I got from it when I first read it, was that the government was creating censorship by making books illegal and controlling what people see on their technology and devices. And then there's another theory where it is not like the government made books illegal, it was more the people's choice to choose technology over books. But there are two running theories about what the author meant for this book and what people are taking away from it. I haven't read this in a long time, so I'm probably going to take another look at this book, read it again because I loved it anyway, and see what my take is now versus when I was younger. And if you've read this book, let me know in the comments below what you think about it and what you think the author meant. But moving on, we're going to talk about The Outsiders. Let me scooch over to the side. I don't have any physical copies of the rest of these books because I was paring down all of the things that I own. So The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This book was centered around two gangs of kids, which really isn't my cup of tea on a rainy day, but it was actually a pretty good book. So the whole plot of the book is really just these two groups of kids are always getting into fights, and at some point something really bad happens, and I don't want to give away the entire book, so I'll leave it there. But when I was younger, I loved the book because I felt like I really heavily related to the Greasers, because the Greasers and the Socks were two gangs, and the Socks were like the rich kids who could never do any wrong, and the Greasers were the poor, lowly, lower class people who the Socks could blame anything on, and then the Greasers would get in trouble for it even though they didn't do anything. So they were constantly just looked down on for things that they didn't do, and they were really just this misunderstood group of children. So I think that a lot of kids could relate to this book growing up, and I feel like that really pulled in a lot of readers for that. They did a really good job talking about friendship and loyalty and families and just how separate classes function. But this was a really good read, 10 out of 10. I would read it a second time if I had it on my shelf. The next two books on my list are autobiographies, the first one being The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. This one I think really had me, at least, and I think other people probably, on their seats, because it was constantly just when are they going to be found? When are they going to be found? When are they going to find them? So that really kept me reading the story, and at some point you start to forget that this book is actually somebody's diary and it belonged to a girl, and even though we're learning from it and it's a part of history, this person probably never expected for her diary to be out in the world, to be part of a curriculum in a classroom, to have people seeing her innermost thoughts and feelings about what's going on around her at the time. It's just really crazy to even be able to read her diary. But again, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read the book, so I'm just going to move on to my next book that I really loved. I read it in an ethics class. It's called I Am Malala, and it's written by Malala. I cannot pronounce her last name, so I'm not even going to try. I want to say my initial reaction when I read this book was, oh my god, they just shot a young girl on a school bus. What happens next? Why would they do something like that, and what happens next? I feel like is what really hooks you into the book. And then later on, the story progresses and it tells you, it gives you all of those answers, but it will also show you like her journey moving forward and all of her accomplishments later on after the event. This is really a happy ending to a bad story that everybody is looking for. So if you're having a bad day and you're really not into nonfiction and you're really not into reading fiction books, but you need something to help like lift your spirit up right now, I recommend reading I Am Malala, hands down. But that being said, I also recommend maybe reading Henrietta Lacks. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks was written as a narrative nonfiction, which I think is actually going to be one of my new favorite genres. I'm gonna start adding into my TBRs more. It was written so well, it was as if you were there with the family, and I can't even call these people characters because they're not characters. These are real people and this is a real event, but it felt like a fiction book. And you were learning so much the entire time. Rebecca takes you through the entire tragedy of what happens to Henrietta and forward into the future with the outcome for her family. It's a really good book, and I think that it's very important for people to know who Henrietta is and the fact that she's the reason why we even have a polio vaccine and so many other really important advances in medical things that have saved people just because we took cells from somebody without their permission. At the end, it was kind of a happy story in a weird, dark, twisted way. It was a dark, twisted part of history that gave us something very important. Those are my 5 favorite books that I remember reading in school that my teachers have assigned to me, and if you have any, you can leave them down below and we can chat about them, and maybe I'll even take a look at them and read them.